Hi, I'm Dahlia Jade. In this video, I'll show you how to make this skeleton bathing in a cauldron door hanger. First, you need a 16-inch plastic cauldron like this one from Party City. Cut the cauldron in half by following the seam all the way around. I used a dollar store steak knife for this step, which worked, but it took me about half an hour. The sides cut easily, but the thicker areas around the lip of the cauldron and the bottom are really difficult to break through. If I was going to do this again, I'd try a handsaw such as a hacksaw or a coping saw. I don't like the shiny new look of these party store plastic cauldrons, so I recommend you treat the surface with spray paints. Sand the surface lightly with a fine sanding sponge or sandpaper and wash it with warm soap and water. I'm using 4 spray paints including a primer, a textured treatment, black spray paint, and a sealant. Once the cauldron is completely dry, coat the surface with black primer such as this Rustoleum American Accents Ultra Cover 2X primer. Let that dry for about half an hour. To add some grainy texture to the cauldron, you're going to use Krylon Stone Texture spray paint and charcoal. I have a very hard time getting this paint to coat evenly, even after 2 minutes of shaking the can, because it's so thick. But don't stress if it looks a bit streaky, because the texture adds character and age to the cauldron. I did 2 coats of stone texture spray about an hour apart. Allow the textured spray paint to completely dry for another hour, then cover the stone texture lightly with a black spray paint such as Krylon Color Master Paint and Primer. If you want the cauldron to look older, make this a light mist and leave some areas of the stone texture exposed. When the cauldron looks the way you want it to, use a sealant such as Rustoleum 2X Ultra Cover Matte Clear Spray. I recommend at least 2 or 3 coats sprayed on about half an hour apart, then let that cure overnight. If you have time, you can give it a few days without handling it before the next steps. Letting the paint harden longer makes it less likely you'll scratch any of it off when you handle it later. While you're waiting for the cauldron to dry, get your skeleton. Make sure to give him a good skeleton name like Thaddeus. I'm using a 35-inch prop skeleton from Party City. He was discounted because he's missing a finger and a hand. We'll hide the hand under the bubbles. Fresh from the store, Thaddeus does not look like a skeleton that needs a bath. He's too white, so we're gonna fix that and make him look like he's been rattling around for a few centuries. Take off his legs and put those in your bone pile. Sand Thaddeus with a fine sanding sponge and wash him with warm soap and water. Then let him dry and cut the rope hanger off his head. We're gonna use 3 spray paints for Thaddeus. The same black and the same sealant that we used on the cauldron, and then a gray such as Rustoleum 2X Ultra Cover in Granite. Get the black spray paint and spray Thaddeus right in the face and immediately start rubbing most of the paint off with a paper towel. The point is to get black into the cracks and crevices to give Thaddeus more definition. Pay attention to his teeth. If the paint dries too quickly to rub off with the towel, try spraying in smaller areas, but don't worry too much because you can always sand excess paint down later. Next, add some definition to Thaddeus' body with the gray spray paint. If you're uncomfortable with this technique, practice on the parts of the skeleton no one will see, such as his lower back. Then work your way up to the ribcage and to the arms. You may want to hit his hands with some black spray paint to make the finger joints pop. At some point, Thaddeus' jaw popped out, which was fine because that made it easier to paint, and it pops back in no problem. I probably handle the skeleton too much, flipping him over before he's dry, but I have fun making a mess with it. When I've made a pass all over Thaddeus, I let him dry for about an hour. Then I come back in with the sanding sponge to create some highlights. I recommend sanding the forehead, the teeth, and the sternum. If he looks ready for his close-up, hit him with some sealant spray. Make sure to seal both his front and back. I did 2 coats of sealant on both sides. Thaddeus took a little under 3 hours to paint, including dry times. Thaddeus seems like the kind of skeleton who would bathe with a rubber ducky. I found a 4-pack of small rubber duckies in Walmart in their baby party section. The normal rubber ducky is much too cheery, so we need to marshal the forces of darkness upon him with some black spray paint. Sand rubber ducky pretty well and rinse him with warm soapy water. Place rubber ducky up off the table on something like an empty toilet paper roll. This will prevent him sticking to the table from weird drips, and it'll make it easier to get full coverage. Using the black primer that you used in the first step on the cauldron, black him out. I actually got way too close to the spray can because I'm not used to spraying something so small, but this worked out anyway. After half an hour dry time, flip Rubber Ducky over and give him another coat of primer. The longer you let Rubber Ducky dry, the more hardened and better prepared the surface will be for the next part. I think I went a couple days. Always handle him with care because you can scratch this paint off with a nail. Get some white acrylic paint, such as this Craft Smart paint, and have fun creating a not at all anatomically correct skeleton design. I'm using small paintbrushes to fill in his skull. I left him eye sockets and added some spine and rib bones and some bones on the wing. I did 6 separate passes over the little skeleton design with white paint to get the white as bright as I wanted it. In places where I made mistakes, I just went over with some Craft Smart black acrylic paint. I also used the black acrylic to fill in the smile line in his beak and give him nostrils. Even though he's tiny, Rubber Ducky took about 3 hours to paint with dry times. When he'd been dry about an hour, I hit him with 3 coats of sealant spray. I would not handle this prop a lot because I'm not convinced that the paint really bonded with the rubber surface, but once he's placed in the cauldron, I don't anticipate touching him again. When all of your elements are painted, the next step is to make a backing for the cauldron. Take a piece of black Foamcore board. Try to find a solid black piece that is black even on the sides. Use your cauldron half as a stencil and trace up the sides. This line becomes a guide for your hot glue in a minute. Then draw another line around where you want the ornaments to bubble over. Have fun imagining how high over and to the sides you want the ornaments to cascade. I used a utility knife to cut through the foam core and then tidied the line up a bit with scissors. Once you have your foam core backing cut, get your glue gun. Put a line of hot glue just inside the cauldron stencil line you drew and quickly press the cauldron into it. If you cut anything like I did, your cauldron's not going to be perfectly flush with the foam core. Fill gaps in with glue where you can. If you have gaps that are too wide to fill with glue, but most of your cauldron is stuck to the foam core, don't worry about it because you really won't see those ugly spots once the cauldron is finished and hung. Take a floral foam rectangle and put it in the bottom of the cauldron so Thaddeus can sit up a bit. I didn't glue this down, but you could if you wanted to. Then push Thaddeus into the floral foam so he's upright. Arrange him the way you want him and get his back arm out of the way. Take 2 more pieces of floral foam and glue those to the foam core board backing and to each other. This is going to be our base for the bubbles. For the bubbles, I got a selection of ornaments from Hobby Lobby. I thought shiny silver mirror balls and iridescent glass balls were my best bet for creating a bubble bath. Make sure to get a few different sizes of ornaments because the smaller ones help fill in any gaps between bigger ornaments. Using the hot glue gun, start by placing the biggest silver ornaments down first. Remove the shiny caps from the ornaments and put a generous amount of hot glue on one side, then press that into the foam with the cap bump facing the back of the cauldron. You can also add hot glue to the lip of the cauldron and press ornaments into that. Make sure to press each ornament firmly so the glue bonds. Sometimes it takes a couple of tries. Continue with the silver ornaments until they cover the floral foam. The gap behind Thaddeus was a little big, so I cut another piece of floral foam down to make another base to glue ornaments behind him. After the big silver ornaments are in place, add smaller silver ornaments to hide gaps where you might see foam. You can start gluing ornaments directly to each other now. These opaque ornaments will hide any ugliness that might show through the transparent ornaments we're adding next. Lie the cauldron down so you can fill in the foam core board on the sides. Add silver ornaments first, followed by iridescent ornaments. Keep building out your bubbles. I'll often test an ornament's placement by putting them down without glue first to see how they fit into the big picture. Find a place to glue down Rubber Ducky. Continue adding bubbles until you're happy with how the tub looks. This is about to go epically wrong. I finished my cauldron and I put 2 damage-free command strips on the back. Now I'm gonna hang it on the door. I wanted the cauldron to have a clean look on the door. The tape I used was supposed to hold up to 8 pounds, and the cauldron is much lighter than that. I followed instructions, wiping the door with rubbing alcohol and holding the cauldron onto the door for more than 30 seconds. It looked good, so I shot some takes of my video outro, but less than 10 minutes later... Well, that didn't work. At least we got it, right? Unfortunately, a lot of the ornaments shattered. I'm sure these command strips work for some things, but I would not risk using them on another project like this. I'm going to go back to Hobby Lobby for another batch of ornaments so I can fix this project. But in the meantime, I'll show you what worked to hang the project I made with the other half of the cauldron. To hang the cauldron, you'll need about 1.5 to 2 feet of chain and 2 small S-hooks. You're going to drill 2 holes in the back of the Foamcore board using a 3/4 inch spade bit. This step is easier if you drill the holes before you glue anything to the Foamcore board. Live and learn. You can reinforce the holes in the Foamcore board with painter's tape to prevent tearing. Put one end of each S-hook through the chain and fit the other ends of the hooks into the drilled holes. I've hung the cauldron by the chain on a standard overdoor wreath hook. In a perfect world, this would be a photo of a happy skeleton luxuriating in a bubble bath, but I hope my cautionary tale saves someone else from heartbreak. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you'll subscribe to my channel for even more creepy crafts. Thanks for watching and have a bewitching day.